Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
For some ungodly reason, I have Fergalicious stuck in my head.
Oh my god.
So delicious.
Sorry. Do you want a palate cleanser? Do you want
I was going to say, the part that I've got stuck in my head is the breakdown when she's like, all the time they come around and something,
yeah.
and I'm trying to tell that I can't be treated like clientele because they say she's delicious. So delicious. Okay, palate cleanser?
Yeah, guess who is going to be a regular on the final season of Claws?
Who?
Juliet Landau.
Oh.
Drusilla.
Okay, why?
Yeah, I don't know. I read it today. My new plaid pants said something on Twitter, and I was like, you're fucking kidding me. And it was reported in Deadline. She's going to be on a regular in the last season.
That's Tastey tasty.
Yes, it is.
Get it, Fergie. Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristin.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show. On today's episode, we are finally going to talk about Emma. But it's been a long time coming, apparently. Because remember, we had plans for it like 3 weeks ago, but then it only opened limited. And so we had to like push that Excalibur episode out.
Yeah, we had to do a lot of like pretty late in the game
adjustments,
schedule shuffling. Yeah, it was a little stressy for me, to be honest.
The greatest movie of the decade came out, The Invisible Man, and I was like, "Oh crap! Now we've got to talk about this." And
already the greatest movie of the decade.
And so once it was really good. That wasn't really shade.
It was really good. It was not shade at all.
And so then when we were watching this, I was like, you know what? I actually desperately want to revisit Clueless for specific reasons, and so we did that. And then by that point, I was like, I might as well watch the 96 version and just like get it all over with. You know what I mean? And so yeah, on today's episode, we're going to talk about all three.
Yeah. They're not wildly different enough to warrant very specific talks about each.
Mm-hmm. And there is a lot to compare and contrast between the three of them. So
yeah, definitely.
Have you read it?
Yes.
Because this is really my introduction to Jane Austen.
Yeah, I guess, yes.
I'm aware of her as an author, and I'm aware of the stories and stuff, but this is the first time that I've really dove in. And so I was going to ask you, is there like a Cliff Notes version or like a beginner's rant on Jane Austen, like what her whole deal was?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, she's amazing. Her books are actually more like satire than anything. They're like commentary on the society of the time. So despite the fact that everything basically ends with a romance, it's all commenting on the society that she lived and grew up in a funny way. They
have a reputation from the outside as being old and stuffy.
Oh, absolutely not. They're funny.
Yeah. And that was evident in all three versions we watched.
So I've read 4 of the 6, and of the 4 I've read, I think Emma is the most playful because it's a lot more actually society-based than the rest. Mm-hmm. Like
as opposed to like character-based, or
so like Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice are both a little more serious. There still are quite funny parts, but they're a little bit more serious and they're a little bit more heavy on the commentary, where like Emma is just sort of like a fun romp about like a spoiled girl who gets in over her head.
Because it's something that was kind of blowing my mind. And frankly, it's ironic that it would, because my trade, like what I would compare this to for me is mythology, how invested I was in the different types of mythology.
Okay.
And that's rife for comedy and satire and stuff. So it's funny to me that I would be shocked that like an old book could resonate.
Yeah, I mean, there's many books that people feel are very stodgy, where like I would even say Jane Eyre is obviously a lot more of a gothic romance than any Jane Austen books are. But there are really deeply funny parts where like Mr. Rochester specifically asks Jane Eyre if she thinks he's handsome, and she's like, no. And that's just it. And it's really funny. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make about classic literature, especially classic literature written by women, is they're like, well, it's just blah, 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 whatever. And it's like, no, it's funny and it's interesting. I promise.
The thing for me that was the most difficult is I, at least, had to kind of it was almost like an opera or a musical where you should familiarize yourself with the material first and then see the adaptation. Because if I watched the 96 version first, I would not have found it funny in a way that both Clueless and the 2020 version really instruct you to the humor. So it's like, because I was aware of the satire or the irony or whatever, I was finding the 96 version hilarious in a way that I would have not if it was the first one I watched. So yeah, I think I will start by saying that I actually absolutely loved this experience.
Yay! I'm so glad.
It was so much fun in a way that I was a little trepidatious at first, but watching different versions in one like kind of chunk, it helped me kind of understand and appreciate all of them.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
And I think the order in which I did it really helped, because I saw Clueless when I was a kid in theaters. It was released on my birthday. So on my 11th birthday in 1995. And
10th birthday.
Well, 10 to 11, right?
No, you turned 10 in 95. Just like I did.
Shit. Okay.
Either way, you were much too young to be watching Clueless.
Well, I confess to you that I was like, one of the reasons why I really wanted to revisit Clueless was because I was like, I have something to tell you that I've never told people. But I was like, I don't really like Clueless. And you were like, how is that possible?
Yeah, I like that. It like does not compute for me.
The first time that I saw it, it was a little bit too mature for me. And it kind of left me with this like weird, uncomfortable feeling. And then I just didn't really revisit it a bunch. And I guess I did, because I did remember when we were rewatching it, a lot of it was coming back to me.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, that first viewing, the ickiness or the uncomfortableness was what maintained through. Like, that's what I thought about when I thought about Clueless.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think I saw it also quite young, but I was like 11 or 12. And for me, it didn't make me uncomfortable so much as I just didn't understand like most of it. And then it was like on subsequent watches, I understood more every time.
Yeah. Up until including this most recent, there were like one or two jokes that we were like, huh.
Well, we had the captions on too, and there are certain ones that I literally, when Elton is like assaulting her in the car and she says, I'm having a Twin Peaks experience, I literally never knew what she said until yesterday. That was the first time in 25 years that I have known what she was saying there.
When you're younger and a person says something in a movie that you don't understand, you don't clock it the way that you do when you're older.
Yeah, but I have distinct memories of trying to know what she said. Like on rewatches, always being like, I have to know what she said. I can't believe I can't tell what she said. And then finally I was like, got it.
And I think for me, it was just a hair. Like, it was just a hair too soon. Like, I think even a year later and I would have been okay. But I remember being very uncomfortable about the sex talk, and I just wasn't there yet. I just wasn't.
We discussed that, especially when we watched Showgirls with Sade, because you were like, I thought that was what adult life was supposed to be like. And you were like, I didn't want any part of it. It
wasn't quite as shocking as Showgirls
of course
was.
Not.
Because again, Showgirls was like a year or two, like at most a year and a half after this. So around the same time, but I was older with Showgirls. And there was a big distinction for me between 12 and 13. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
As with many youths. I do have to say that revisiting Clueless this time, I really enjoyed it. I think it's really very good. And it also holds up in a shocking way. I think.
Does. It really does. Despite, or perhaps because of all the hilarious 90s LA slang. I think that's like a big part of it.
Some of it, I feel like, sort of came from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people knew that slang from the movie. Like,
yeah.
I feel like people in LA, obviously, it was part of their daily life. But it's like, I think for us, a lot of like I'm totally bugging. It's like, that's not dated slang to us as it is a movie reference.
Sure.
And so in that regard, it doesn't come off as cringy. And another thing that shocked me is almost everything they wear holds up. I couldn't believe it. There is so few outfits in this that are cringy or like trendy in a bad way.
And Amber wears all of them.
True.
I mean, Amber wears all of them, and then Dion has that stupid plastic hat. Everything else is fine.
Like a certain person, like Zoe Kravitz could rock that.
Zoe Kravitz could rock that hat. Fuck you for telling me that.
And so it's like everything she wears. It's one of the ones that struck me the most was the sheer tuxedo shirt, like the blousey one, and then
when
she has
Cher
a vest.
realizes that she's in love with Josh.
Is that what she's wearing?
Yeah,
She has the vest, and then it's either skirt or shorts or whatever. There's so many, and they would look 90s. Like, if a girl were to wear those now, it would look retro, but it would be in like a chic, like, yes, bitch kind of way.
100%.
That's a feat, if you ask me. And it's kind of so round of applause to, I don't know who the costume designer was, but round of applause, because true couture should be timeless. It can look like its era, but truly good fashion should never be embarrassing.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I have to give it that. And I think when we approached the 2020 Emma, even though it had been a long time since I had seen Clueless, a lot of it was slightly imprinted on me. Okay. So my memories of Clueless were helping me understand Emma as it was going. You kind of were leaning over to me and being like, okay, that's Jeremy Sisto. Okay, that's, Stacey Dash. Because that confused me for a long time. Up until the 96 Emma, I finally put it together. I was thinking that Stacey Dash's character, the Dion, was a fabrication.
No, Dion is Mrs. Weston.
That's what you said. And I was like, well, that's strange. I was like, because Mrs. Weston is like older and married. And I was like, oh, Dion's relationship with...
Well, but also in Emma, Mrs. Weston is like less than 5 years older than Emma.
Okay, so she's around the same age.
They are close to the same age. That's why they were so close as like a governess and, her charge.
I forgot
and then she married a much older man. Mr. Weston is she's his second wife.
Well, Dion is a peer to Cher in a way that Mrs. Weston is not quite to Emma.
Correct. In my opinion, none of the versions have 100% done Mrs. Weston right, because she is always appearing quite a bit older than Emma, and she's really not that much older than Emma.
The 2020 version was so stylized in a good way, in a way that I liked, but it is much faster. It's sharper.
Mm-hmm.
Emma comes off a little bit wicked in it.
Yeah, there's like more of a conniving maliciousness to her in the newest one, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, I was fine with it. I thoroughly enjoyed it because it's like, I thought it made her interesting, and that's where the satire really comes out, because it's like she's existing and excelling within her time. So it's like, how much, it's Sansa Stark. It's like, how much are we going to blame her for being good at what she does? Like,
yeah, so there are definitely, I was telling Will in the car about it when we got done with the newest one, the 2021. And I was kind of like, there are things I think that I would choose from both to make a super Emma.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are definitely things that I still prefer about the 96 version. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, but I don't know. Because like, I find Jeremy Northam's Mr. Knightley to be like the perfect Austen hero.
Is he 96?
Yes.
He was the hottest one. Yeah.
Well, he's absolutely the hottest one. But the more I think about it, I'm like, oh, I don't know. The one in the 2020, he ended up being really good, and they had that sexy dance and everything. And obviously, you can't put Jeremy Northam's with Anya Taylor-Joy because it already was like a heinous age difference with Gwyneth Paltrow.
I didn't know that he was meant to be 37 and she's meant to be 21. That is a lot.
They fiddled with the ages a little bit too in the newest one. But then there's the other thing too is like I would pick Bill Nighy's Mr. Woodhouse over any other Mr. Woodhouse.
He was a character.
Even over Dan Hedaya.
Dan Hedaya puts up a good fight, but he's a different...
He's a whole different animal.
He's a different character. Yeah. Bill Nighy was the best. And because that's what I would say to people is I would say, like, having not read the book, I would say, for me, the 2021 will probably be my favorite because it is very stylish. It's very sharp and it's funnier. Mm-hmm. I think it's very accessible to a mainstream audience, on par with Clueless. And well, one of the things I like the most about the 2021 is that it was sexy. In a way that I could have used more. Like, I loved the notion of meeting Mr. Knightley getting dressed because we've seen that scene from a woman so many times.
Oh, yeah, like 400 times.
But we don't see it from a man frequently. And especially because I find period dress fascinating. Like, it's up there, not as good, but it's up there with Glenn Close and Dangerous Liaisons.
Oh, my God.
Watching his like manservant dress him. And also it was like a great way to get some nudity in there and like sexualize him in a very, I think, necessary way.
Just a little bit of a butt.
Oh, it was a lot of a butt.
Just a whole butt.
There was a bit more because he tucks his shirt into like his junk. There was like a hefty
he
grip.
does do that. Yeah.
And like I said, I could have even used more of that because there's a scene where Emma like warms her butt on the fire. She like lifts her dress up and her butt is like, and it's like that kind of stuff. I would have loved more of that.
So his name is Johnny Flynn, and I do want to just give props because he was very good, especially at the more like emotional moments with Emma specifically. I quite liked him a lot. And I especially because at first I was like, he's not handsome enough to be Mr. Knightley. And then the more it went, I was like, yeah. You're fine.
He is though, but it's more. Well, he's blonde, which that was nice because in the old version, everybody kind of looks the same.
So that is something for me, having read all of these books, I kind of can't with a blonde Regency hero. It like just doesn't suit for me. Like if you showed me a blonde Mr. Darcy, I would be like, get the fuck out. Who do you think you are with this blonde Mr. Darcy? Absolutely not. So it's like always, it's like Jeremy Northam, it's Colin Firth, it's Hugh Grant, it's
Colin
never...
Firth is sandy, is he not?
His hair is hard brown in the old Pride and Prejudice, yeah.
Okay.
But the only one I'll accept is Alan Rickman's Colonel Brandon is kind of blondish, and it's fine. But he's also a secondary hero. He's not the main hero.
Well, anyways, what did you say his name was? I should have opened all the windows, but I didn't.
Johnny Flynn?
Yeah. His Mr. Knightley was the easiest for me to understand. I understood his motives. I understood everything in a way, like even I think more so than Paul Rudd, because it's like Paul Rudd, you get there, but it's like there was a lot of talk about Clueless where they'll say that it's like loosely adapted or loosely based or whatever. And I'm watching that movie and I'm like, this is a straightforward adaptation. Like
it's extremely, it's extremely straightforward. In almost every way.
Yeah.
And it's alarming to me how talented Amy Heckerling is and how little work she's gotten over the years, because she wrote that too. She wrote that screenplay. She adapted Emma into Clueless and then directed it. And it's incredible. And it's a cultural touchstone and it's iconic. And she barely works.
Yeah, not only does it translate into 90s from like like 1790s or something?
Yeah.
Into like 1990s, but then the 1990s part so far has translated an additional 25 years. And
100%.
It's a masterpiece in more ways than I think it has gotten credit for thus far.
I agree.
I think it will, though. I really do think it'll stand the test of time. And especially once given the parameters of it's a 90s teen flick. I think when put in that context, you can very easily say that it's an excellent film in a way that if you were like, what's an excellent film? Clueless. But if you're like, what's an excellent 90s teen flick? Clueless.
Yeah, 100%.
because the casting of all three of them, I feel like Anya Taylor-Joy is maybe the biggest question mark because we are still so new in her career and everything.
Okay.
But Gwyneth Paltrow was so perfect and so Emma in the 96 version. And Alicia Silverstone is so perfect. And it's so, like, they say something about her being pretty in the movie. I don't remember the line, but he says something about, like, you're very pretty or whatever. And I was like, try a generation-defining beauty. Like,
yeah. She's something else. Alicia Silverstone, especially in her prime,
and I mean, I hate
something
to be
else.
icky this way, but it was like 18-year-old Alicia Silverstone. There was something magic happening.
Yeah.
And she is intoxicating in that movie. Even with, and the Clueless part actually really works. And that's something that's so funny. It's like I would have credited that nature or that element of the character to Clueless, but it's there in the original Emma's, and I'm assuming also the book.
Yeah, you have to be very careful because Emma can't be stupid. She's very smart and she's accomplished and she's good at her job, which is handling the estate and taking care of her father. And, you know, she's a good friend and she's relatively nice, but she is not yet aware of the way the world works. And that's one of the things, I think it was in the newest one, where somebody literally was like, Emma needs to be, she needs to like fall in love and have the affections not returned. And then she'll learn something. And I just was like, that's fucking true.
Because she is so privileged, and that comes out in the few times where she behaves in an untoward manner.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, it is the most biting in the 2020 version. It's actually pretty devastating. But when she takes down, what is her name? Mrs. Bates?
Miss Bates, yeah.
Miss Bates. That was also fascinating. It, like, the 96 version feels like its priority was the language. Like, I feel
yeah.
I, having not read the book, I would feel like that is the most directly lifted from the page.
I mean, so it's been a minute since I've read Emma, but I think you're probably right. I also, I don't want to be mean, and we love Gwyneth Paltrow, but she was doing like a very medium impression of Audrey Hepburn for like most of the movie. And I was like, I forgot when she tried to be British for like 6 years.
The 96 version especially is very focused on the words. Like I wrote down a couple lines. The one I loved the most was when Elton was not proposing, but like
he was like declaring
her.
Passionate love for her in the carriage after the Christmas party.
And she said she was like, I'm not Harriet. The party spirit has confused you. Yeah. There was another one that I liked so much. It's actually when they were talking about Miss Bates. So it syncs up. But they were talking about like her being like an old maid or something like that being undesirable. And she said only poverty would make celibacy contemptible.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like almost like if you're rich enough and an old maid, that's the ideal. And so it's like it's the specific words they use. And I find something so interesting, especially considering how we are today, where it's like, today we're like, what did you mean? Where back then they were like, but what did you say? They know what they mean. But it's like they wait for the words to be official, because all Emma says to Mrs. Bates is that it should be easy for you to say something stupid. Yeah. And it is treated like it was gutting.
Well, because what she said, it's even worse than that, because what she says is you'll only be able to say 3 things and then you'll have to stop, which is hard for you.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Because you're constantly spitting out dumb things all the time. It's like there's so much more.
But I mean, we talk to each other that way all the time in modern society. And we mean it in good fun, but...
Yeah, but that's the thing is, like, in that moment, Emma was in a heightened place and she didn't mean it in good fun.
No, I understand that. But my point is that it's like... She could have felt that way. It could be plain as the look on her face, but no one would notice it. But the fact that she then uttered 5 words, suddenly it was like, well, now we've said it. You know what I mean? And so it's like, there are so many scenes where 2 of them are having a conversation and both of them know that they're professing love, but they're like, don't say something you can't take back. And I was like, what does it matter if you say it? You both already know what you both
know. Yeah. Okay. Because it's sort of like once you say it out loud, you can't take it back.
Yeah, in a way that, like I said, that's not how we work anymore. Like,
no, yeah, I definitely
modern
agree.
Society is all about reading between lines and stuff, and it's very interesting. And it's something that came up a lot with Little Women, where I was like, it's fascinating to me how much has changed and yet how much has not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in a weird way, this experience and these experiences back to Little Women has sort of been like finding a time capsule, like
Mm-hmm.
to a time before. And I mean, sure, I guess that's what old literature is, but
Yeah.
it's like I had to find a new way to trick myself into being interested in these old stories.
Okay.
And if it's a snazzy production with like costumes and celebrities that I like, then hey, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that completely. And to that point, I was actually going to compare the thing about being a rich spinster with Aunt March.
mhm.
Because that from Little Women, that she was a rich spinster and she was like, I don't have to be married because I have money.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, get it, Aunt March.
We mentioned already the 2020 version of Emma does kind of lean into Emma's bitchiness a little bit more in a way that I liked, I appreciated, because it made her developed. It made her three-dimensional. Like,
It does make her a richer character, because it's the same thing that happens, again, to go with Little Women, it's the same thing that happens to like Beth and Joe, where they become one-dimensional in service of making sure we love the character.
mhm.
And it's like, I can love a flawed character. I
Whereas,
much
like,
prefer.
it's practically a virtue for men to be a jerk, but it's
Right.
like, God
Mr.
forbid
Knightley,
a woman.
yeah, Mr. Knightley is such a dick to Emma a couple of times. And it's like, she's kind of has it coming, but like, there's not often an excuse to be that much of a dick to your best friend and sister-in-law. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, it's kind of rough. And so I am much more inclined to like a fully realized three-dimensional character. Like, I preferred Saoirse Ronan's vanity as Joe, like the vanity about her writing, as
Mhm.
opposed to just like the fact that she so sincerely couldn't take it when Friedrich was telling her it wasn't good was so refreshing and interesting in a way that like nothing Winona Ryder did was that interesting.
Yeah, and she went from zero to butthurt so quick.
So
like,
quick, and it's like that's such an interesting glimpse into Joe's vanity and her ego. And it's similar with Emma, with Anya Taylor-Joy's Emma, where she's got like a sharp tongue, like a sharper tongue than in any of the other adaptations. And it's refreshing to see her be kind of shitty.
well, and think about it, because this is another thing that Clueless handles well. A lot of people spend time, like people within the Clueless universe and people outside viewing it as a movie, spend time being like, ugh, silly girl, like, you know,
Mhm.
stupid girl. And it's like, yeah, but she's winning. Like,
Yeah.
it's very Elle Woods, you know, 6
definitely.
full years before Elle Woods.
Especially the whole point where she's like trying to get her teachers to change her grades,
Yeah,
and
she argues her grades up. And it's like, at the end of the day, she got the A. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
what is considered success? But back to Anya Taylor-Joy's Emma, where she's a beautiful, like genetically gifted. She's a beautiful young girl with money, with opportunity,
Mhm.
in a time that was incredibly intoxicating from like a social hierarchy place.
Well, yeah, and hard for women within that hierarchy.
How are you not going to be a little bit of a bitch? Like, how are you not going to be a little bit superficial?
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I think the comparison from Regency England to 90s Beverly Hills is actually pretty brilliant.
100%.
And her having the capacity for nastiness, for ugliness, and learning from it and choosing goodness, for me, makes it an infinitely more rewarding story. And especially because that's something I think that the picnic scene with Miss Bates is the best in the 2020 version.
Mhm.
It's not in Clueless.
Well, there isn't really Miss Bates in Clueless. Miss Bates is like the Pismo Beach disaster.
What?
Like the thing that she decides to like
Oh, the
help
cause
that
she
charity.
tries to...
That's essentially Miss Bates in Clueless.
Well, and the comment about the farmer / Breckenmeyer is so rude from Emma in the beginning, where she's like, he's too poor for me to care about him, but not poor enough for me to notice. And like,
So he's too poor for me to be able to reasonably socialize with him, but he's not poor enough to deserve my charity.
yeah, it was very Marjorie Tyrell. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeesh.
Yeah.
I was like, oof.
Robert Martin, I wish they focused more on him in the sense that he got like 3 close-up shots in the 2020 version, but I would be
Breckenmeyer
interested.
Is the best version of him.
Absolutely, Breckenmeyer is the best version. I would prefer. I would prefer a version of Emma where we got slightly more Robert Martin.
Mm-hmm. So, what is precisely Harriet's deal? Is she a bastard? They talk about not knowing who her parents are.
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure based on the movies, and I don't remember the book enough to say, but basically, she's not an orphan because she has had parents, but they like didn't make provisions for her and they didn't necessarily raise her, so she got sent to a boarding school or like a boarding house in Highbury where Emma lives, and then they just sort of left her.
So then she is like Cecile, kind of, in Dangerous Liaisons.
Although, kind of, except for Cecile's mother is there, yeah. But she is like a very innocent like person who doesn't have anybody looking out for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, except for the boarding house matron.
I do think Brittany Murphy is my favorite take on the character. I thought Toni Collette was fine.
I think Toni Collette is hilarious.
Is she your favorite?
I don't know that she's my favorite because I actually quite enjoyed Mia Goth in a way that I wasn't sure I was going to. But first of all, I just find Toni Collette magnetic in everything. And there's something about her, like, just dopiness as Harriet that I cannot get over every time I watch it.
True. Because Brittany Murphy, Ty is less a dope. Like, Ty is like, has an edge that neither Mia Goth or Toni Collette have.
Well, and I think that that's a product of the time period they're set in, because Ty is allowed to be sexual and she's allowed to like have a little more agency in a way that she just probably, she most likely has absentee parents in a way that like Harriet is beholden to the kindness of others.
Yeah.
100%. And she is beholden to the whims of Emma in a way that Ty, should Cher just drop her out of nowhere, would go hang out with the Lodies on the grassy knoll and she'd be fine.
Sure. Well, and also it's like, I think that in the 96 version, I think Harriet comes off more as a doormat than Mia Goth did. Mia Goth just seems a little bit like half a bubble off plum, you know what I mean?
She's like a little dim and a little silly.
Yeah.
And but I find Harriet, like, there's almost always like a homely friend in the
original Duff. I wrote that note down.
Yeah, there's almost always a homely friend in Jane Austen, and in Pride and Prejudice it's Charlotte Lucas, and they're always more saintly than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like almost always a lesson for the heroine when she needs a little comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I enjoy Harriet, especially because after a while you're like, why are you still friends with Emma? All she keeps doing is telling you to go after men, and then they pick another woman, and more often than not, it's Emma. Yeah. It's just like, how many times can this happen and you still want to be friends with Emma?
I could not with Alan Cumming with his Elton. The fucking party scene, I was cackling when he kept like patting Emma's shoulder.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude. And the letters are present in like the old and new version, but it's like they were a big deal in the 96 Emma. Like it was like whatever TV show everybody was watching. Like,
sure, yes, yeah. I mean, that's how it was. But there is this movie that I need you to watch at some point. We don't have to cover it, because I'm pretty sure you won't like it, but there's a movie called Circle of Friends, and Alan Cumming is in that as well. And other than that, it's Minnie Driver and Saffron Burrows. He is just despicable in it, and it's very similar to his Mr. Elton, and I kind of want to just force you to watch it now, because I just want you to just like live in the disgust with me.
Also, Mrs. Weston in this version was not Olivia Williams.
No, she was not. I almost said that yesterday, and then I looked it up again because I was like, I'm not 100% sure I'm right, and I was not.
I looked at it and I was like, Olivia Williams, awesome. I accepted it at face value. And then for some reason I thought, well, let me look that up and make sure. And so I pulled up Olivia Williams, and sure enough, Emma, 1996. And I was like, great. And something prompted me to explore further. And she was in a TV movie version of Emma in 1996. And I was like, that is weird.
Yeah. Did she play Mrs. Weston?
No, I don't
okay.
see who she played in that. Or I don't remember who she played in that one. But Ewan McGregor, I did not recognize him. Like, I did not realize that was him until he started singing.
Oh, that's funny. It's
like,
funny that you recognize his singing.
Literally, yeah. He started singing and I was like, I know that voice.
That's hilarious.
Because he looks terrible.
Yeah, his hair is bad.
It's awful. It's so bad.
His hair is really bad.
And I'm on the record as loving blondes and bad 90s hair, but that does not extend to 1790s.
So I don't want to like harsh your mellow or anything, but I kind of feel like we might need to watch this other Emma with Olivia Williams because Kate Beckinsale is Emma and Mark Strong is Mr. Knightley.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Olivia Williams is Jane Fairfax.
Oh, right. She's kind of like a nothing character in... Or no,
yeah,
Jane.
So she was quite a lot more biting in the 2020 version than the 96 version. Because in the 96, she's just a plain, boring girl.
Just brown hair. It's like brown hair just shows up.
But she's exquisitely beautiful because it's Polly Walker.
Right.
Which is so weird. But then in the new one, she sort of has like a nemesis relationship with Emma.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that I really enjoyed, that there was something different about it.
Mm-hmm. The hair in the 96 version, it's the best in Clueless.
Well, of course.
It's the best in, I was going to say, the 2020 version, because they have all those stupid ringlets and stuff.
Yeah.
An exceptionally stupid era for hair, Regency.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends, because like you said about the 2020 version, it's very stylized, because that's the most ringlets I've ever seen in a Jane Austen adaptation.
It was Regency for a 2020 audience, but I was like, that era's hairstyles, it's like a competition to see who can be more unflattering, because it's like parting women's hair down the middle and sculpting it to their face.
Yeah.
And then framing with like poodle puffs on either side or like a knot on the top of your head. Like, it's exceptionally stupid hairstyles, but...
Yeah, so I'll warn you now that a couple of times Keira Knightley has very bad hair in the Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. However... she was already filming Domino, so some of it is bad wigs.
Okay.
So, just so you know.
Watching the 96 Emma, I was like, Gwyneth Paltrow's scalp must have been screaming at the end of the day. I cannot
imagine having your hair pulled that tight back.
That
it's awful.
tight up? Can you, did you think
Truly
about that
awful.
watching the movie?
Yeah, of course.
I was like, I had a headache by the end of it.
Yeah.
But, I was talking about Mrs. Bates. My favorite handling of her and that character is Miranda Hart is the 2020. And especially because they go ahead and dwell, and they need to, because the 2020 version is the quote unquote, as we said, more wicked version of Emma.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to dwell more on her kind of reparations. And so both the scene where she goes to Miss Hart and the farmer boy, I forget his name again, Weston, maybe?
No.
Breckenmeyer.
No, I forgot. Shit. What the fuck? Mr. Weston is the governess's. Robert Martin is the farmer.
So who's Mr. Weston?
Mr. Weston is Mrs. Weston's husband. Frank Churchill's father, the governess's husband.
Okay, sure.
You watched 3 versions in 2 days.
I remember what they look like.
Jesus.
Read my mind. I'm picturing him perfect, clear as day. So yes, when she goes to visit Mrs. Hart, what was her name? Betsy?
Miss Bates.
Miss Bates.
I'm gonna punch you.
When she goes to visit Miss Bates in the 2020 version, that was it was very touching. Miranda Hart is so good, just
so
in general,
good.
But so good in the movie. And it's so funny because it's like, and we already mentioned a little bit that, I actually like that part where Emma's a bitch because I think she does need to be taken down a notch.
Oh, 100%. And the way that Mr. Knightley does it too, because he scolds her in a way that it's not even 100% about her behavior. It's about how other people are going to use her behavior to treat Miss Bates poorly.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, and it just is like it's basically like your actions have consequences, idiot.
Mm-hmm. Again, to the whole it's about the words. It's like just the mere fact that she does apologize in the 2020 version. It's water under the bridge almost immediately. Where in the 96 version, doesn't she just kind of run off.
Yeah, so Miss Bates and Jane Fairfax like leave the room when they know that Emma's there, and I did prefer it that Miranda Hart like spoke to her about it, but I also did like the point they made, and I think that I liked the I always liked the Miss Bates from the 96 version, but Miranda Hart did something like a lot more seeming with the same lines where she's like, I must have been very disagreeable for her to have said something like that in front of other people.
It's the kind of thing, yes, it's like it gets pitiful out of nowhere, where it's like, she meant to be rude, she didn't mean to be mean.
Right.
Mrs. Bates is so daffy that you kind of are like, she's not even going to understand that I'm being mean to her. It's like, we all go through this usually in high school or middle school, but it's like when you're being mean to a friend and then you actually hurt their feelings and you're like, shit.
Yeah, 100%.
I went too far. Yeah, I really, really liked it. And frankly, in all three versions, I think the realization that she's in love with...
That Emma is in love with Mr. Knightley?
Yes, Knightley. I think that the realization is the best in Clueless.
I'm totally butt crazy in love with Josh.
Yeah, that's the best kind of aha moment. But it's good in all three movies because it's obviously telegraphed from the beginning. But you're excited to be going through it with the characters versus the clearly we're building to this. This is so annoying. Like,
yeah, I think for me, the appeal, because like, all these people are gonna, that's an Austen trademark. It always ends happily. They all end with a wedding. I think the appeal is seeing how the characters are going to find their way to each other. Like they're going to, but watching them overcome the things they need to overcome is the fun part. And the dancing quadrilles with each other is like helpful as well. Sexy quadrilles in front of other people.
I really did love all three, I guess, because the most prevalent one at this point, or the most relevant one rather, is the 2020 Emma. I will say that I loved it. If you're even remotely inclined, go for it. And I think it's a relatively accessible adaptation. You don't have to be like a Jane Austen connoisseur to get it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Based on things that you and Will have told me about myself, I always want people to know that I think things are accessible that other people might not find accessible. But I did find it accessible. I thought it was one of the better. It's like a little less, not necessarily twisty, but it's like a little less all over the place.
It's less stuffy.
Way less stuffy.
It's more cinematic. The camera moves more. The colors are brighter. The silks are silkier. Like, it's just more lush.
Well, do you know what's weirdly interesting is so many of these Regency things, especially like the ones that the BBC makes, they all like use the same dresses.
That it shows.
Yeah, well, yeah, but like a ton of them, like that's like half the trivia on these on Pride and Prejudice, and Emma is like, this dress was also worn by this character in the other blah blah blah. And I really appreciated that all of the 2020 Emma was like, it was a lot brighter and it was new and I had never seen.
There's a scene where she has like a full on just like neck choker, like a neck ruff.
And I have never seen anyone wearing that before.
Well, watch Van Helsing.
Yeah, well, I meant in an Austen adaptation specifically.
I said something to you about that specific dress, and you were like, this is slightly more heightened, like a more stylized version.
Yeah, it's not, because you leaned over and you were like, this is Regency, right? And I was like, these clothes are not period accurate. Like, just so you know.
That was exactly what, because I was kind of like, oh.
Yeah, no. Not 100%. Like the Empire waist and everything, all of that,
sure.
And the cap sleeves, that was all correct. But Emma wore a lot of stuff that was not totally correct.
That's just probably why I liked it so much.
Yeah, it was amazing. I prefer the fashion in this as well, but
it's not completely accessible, as evidenced by Will, your husband, because it was over and he was kind of like, nothing. He was like, I didn't get anything from that.
Well, to his exact words were, I fucking hate rich people. So to which I just am like, I don't have the time to talk about this with you. It's just like, that's like my literal dream in life is to live as Emma Woodhouse.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of anything else? Were there any more talking points with Clueless or 96 Emma or?
Paul Rudd is and has always been and will always be a babe.
Dream babe.
Dream babe.
I gotta be honest, 2015 Paul Rudd all the way.
Really?
Yeah,
yeah. First Ant-Man?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
All the way. He was...
Yes, okay, but you cannot argue with me that he hasn't always been a babe just because you prefer 2015.
He's dreamy as Josh, but he's just a little bit... He's a little too tender in a way that it's like, you can't be that soft and kind of a jerk. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but he is going to like UC Berkeley or something. You know what I mean? Like he's listening to like a adult contempo, and he's got that Lisa Loeb girlfriend. I don't know. The tenderness I think suits Josh.
This time I understood everything she was saying.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Oh my God.
I know exactly what she's talking about.
I do love it when Cher totally reads her when she's like, I remember Mel Gibson accurately, and he didn't say that. That Polonius guy did. And I just was like, get it, Cher.
And that's actually something that I do appreciate. And even as a kid, I appreciated from Clueless was that you think that the movie, and again, me as like a 10-year-old / 11-year-old going to see this, I kind of thought going in based on the poster and the title that the movie was like, look at these bimbos. And the movie's not.
No. And I think that is what benefits so much from Amy Heckerling being behind the scenes in more than one capacity, is she's like, teenage girls are not stupid. They're just clueless.
They're naive,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, that's literally the whole thing.
That really comes out in all three versions, but particularly in Clueless, that it's like, you know, there are virtues and faults to everyone. And never, well, to name drop it again, never underestimate Elle Woods, you know? And I really, really appreciated the entire experience.
Yeah. There's also nothing wrong with being a virgin who can't drive.
Brittany Murphy was, in fact, a virgin who couldn't drive when she said that line.
My God. Hilarious. There's nothing shameful about it.
We didn't pour one out for Brittany Murphy. We could do a Brittany Murphy episode, because I actually adore, well, both of us, I wasn't stating that as a contest, but I adored her in a way that I was gutted when she died.
You've never seen Uptown Girls, right?
I have not, actually.
We can watch Uptown Girls. I think it's cute.
And we should also pour one out for Stacey Dash, but... Well,
she's not physically dead.
She's dead to me, so...
What a note to go out on. Wow.
Oh, yeah!
All right. Well, like Will said, if you're at all inclined to see any version of Emma, absolutely go for it.
Go for it. What's the worst that's going to happen? Your character could be enriched?
Yes, your character could be enriched. Everyone's character could be enriched by a little Jane Austen.
I'm kind of pumped for Pride and Prejudice now.
Yes.
I've read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
It's not the same.
I know it's not this.
That's fine. It's fine.
It's similar. That's what we're doing, right?
No, we could. I would watch it. I caught the beginning of it the other day. Definitely your life can be enriched by experiencing any Jane Austen. I think they're all great. So definitely go see it and let us know what you think. You can talk to us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching, Instagram @SoI'mWatchingThisShow. We are also, we have a website, soimwatching.com. Sorry, I should not be watching this food video while I try to do that.
I was like, we need to work on your script.
Sorry, that was my bad. We have a website, soimwatching.com. And that links out to everything, including our Patreon, where we are currently covering Riverdale, and 911 will be back soon. And it also links out to our YouTube and everything else, where we're putting out bonus episodes of The Magicians every week for the rest of this season. And other than that, you can rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. And that's it for us.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.